Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Full Send Living. Today we are talking about, is the gospel always appropriate?
Let's send it.
I can't even remember.
I can tell you forgot what we were talking
Is
about.
the gospel?
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Full Send Living. I'm one of your hosts, Nate Thompson. This is the other host,
Ethan Bricker. Thank you for joining us. And if you're listening on audio, why don't you run on over to our YouTube channel where you can watch our pretty faces while we talk about this topic right now. And while you're here, hit that subscribe button and hit the like button as well. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Do it.
Do it. Just do it. Hey, Andrew.
Yo,
Andrew.
Andrew, I know what you did.
I saw what you did. Thanks for hitting that subscribe button.
And I'm all right with that. That's all right by me.
That's all right by me.
Okay, Andy Vincent. Go ahead.
Okay.
What are we talking about?
Is the gospel always appropriate? Okay, so
I think so.
this is going to be debatable.
Yeah.
I guess in the sense that I'm sure there might be some of you who disagree with what we think today. So why don't you comment below if you disagree? Why don't you come at us hard?
Bring it.
Bring it on. Come at me, bro. Is the gospel always appropriate? My answer is yes. The gospel is always appropriate.
Yeah.
You know why? Because the gospel is good news.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we'll just come right at it.
Go.
If the gospel is not appropriate in your life for certain settings or certain people, then it could be that you don't believe the true gospel.
Yeah.
And that you have lost sight of what Jesus has done for you.
I'm about to be baptized again.
I baptized you. Okay. Anyways, I had to take a pause to baptize my co-host, Nate.
Hey, now.
What I mean by the gospel is this, that the gospel is the good news of Jesus Christ. Jesus came to earth as a man, lived a sinless, holy life like we couldn't, took all of our sin, all of our shame, all of our guilt, took it, paid the penalty of death that we deserved on the cross, died, and was risen again 3 days later as a brand new creation. And basically what that represents is that we were dead in sin, and by the cross of Jesus and by what he did and the finished work that he paid on Calvary made it a way so that we could become brand new people. So like Ethan before Jesus, tons of guilt, tons of shame, just because of living in sin. Like you can't get around it. You're born into it. Like you're born into a fallen state. After knowing Jesus, newness of life, new creation, I don't have to carry that weight and that burden. And Jesus stepped into my life and into Nate's life, and he unlocked the cage that we were living in. So that's what we say is the gospel.
Yeah.
It's good news because we were once bound and now we're free.
Yeah. I think
So I just wanted to say that.
you did it, and I loved it. There's a phrase C.S. Lewis said that Jesus didn't come to make bad people good. He came to make dead people alive.
Yes.
And I think that is so true. It's just, that is the truth. And the sense I think of, I wonder sometimes like with where there's not like an appropriateness where we feel like, well, I can't say that, or I can't share what I believe or all this stuff. And we have this thought that we can't do that. I've wondered sometimes that it's because what we're attempting to share is more of the idea of, if you do this, and this right, you'll be good and you'll be saved. When the gospel is
if
not
you
that.
Follow this 3-step program.
Yeah, and I think there's like a sense of like, I mean, I could probably rant for a long time about some of this stuff, I think, with like where I think the Western church has taken on the vulnerability of the gospel to where it's like their responsibility to share it. So if I just get somebody to go to church, my pastor will do all the work.
Yeah.
You know,
So
and there's
true.
this sense. So then when you go to share the gospel, I think a lot of us, man, we think if we could get somebody to come to church, and then there is a weirdness there because you're almost like trying to, I have in the very recent past, almost more have tried to share the idea of something I knew about than someone I knew, you know? And it's like, if I could get this person in a church, man, that'd be better. And then you just leave them there and do what? I don't know. You know,
Yeah.
there's no discipleship there, but the gospel, something I want to read this that I wrote down with God one of the time. I was just praying and talking about it. And I just wrote, the gospel is always appropriate and ready. It's precise and sensitive enough to remove a speck from an eye and still bold enough and aggressive enough to cut the head off a giant.
So good. I
And
love
it's
that.
so true.
It is
like,
so true.
It's so like precise. Like when you I have moments when I have glimpses of me before Jesus came into my life, and it's not good. It's like I would be just dead,
Yeah.
dead. Not even the sense of like like I was in a gang, I was gonna get shot. I mean the sense of there's no life in me. Like I don't know that I would have been a life-giving person in the sense of like kindness and generosity, and I would just I would have a selfishness that I would just be embarrassed about to even share more about. But
Yeah.
I feel like when Jesus really when he found me, it was like it changed my life. And like that sense of the gospel where there's moments where it is just so sensitive to just that taking an eyelash out sensitivity to just crushing something
Yeah.
with assertiveness. So I've been curious how often I've presented not the gospel. I've presented an idea of how to be a good person,
Yeah.
not how to be alive.
Yep. Yeah, the gospel's always appropriate to share when you know it's a person that you're talking about. You know, like
Yeah.
when
Dude,
it's
that's
it's
truth.
not appropriate
Oh, dude.
is when it's an ideology or a philosophy that you believe, because then you're pushing an agenda or you're pushing a mindset on somebody. But knowing Jesus isn't a mindset; it's a encounter with somebody who wrecked your life.
Yeah.
You know, and it has nothing to do with I want you to believe what I believe. It's I want you to know who I know.
Dude.
You know, and whether you know or not, it's not going to hurt my feelings. But when you know Jesus, you won't be the same. Because anybody who has lived life before meeting Jesus and before he's taken that burden of sin and shame off of their shoulders, anybody would say, I don't like the current state I'm in.
Yeah.
You know, unless we just didn't want to be humble and just realize like, I've never met somebody who could say, yeah, I really loved myself before I met Jesus. I've never met somebody, usually when they meet Jesus and they walk into a relationship with him is when they can actually first start to like themselves. But before that, there's a lot of self-hatred and self-condemnation that we put on ourselves. And so when I hear people say different things like, well, I don't know if you should share the gospel with them. You really should kind of rate where they're at with the Lord and kind of put them on the scale and decide, you know, is it time yet or is it not time? It's always time. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
It's always time. If Jesus said, I'll leave the 99 to find the one, it's always time.
Yeah.
You know, and it's always appropriate. I think that we've created our own obstacles and our own hurdles of social interaction and social comfortability and things like that have stopped us from sharing. And then it all kind of loops back to, it's either you want to be comfortable and not be awkward, or it comes back to what you just said of like, we actually don't know Jesus the way we thought we did. And so talking to somebody about Jesus feels a lot more like talking to them about Joe Biden,
Yeah.
who I don't know personally. I know some things because of the news or what somebody else said, but I don't know him, you know. But like Jesus, I know, and I can speak to his character and his nature, you know. There's just a lot, and there's a lot there with that.
There is. And it's like, at what point have we, because they're, okay, so at any point, like Jesus will be just rejected by people, you know, in the sense of like, okay, they're like, no. I mean, is there the personalness of when, I mean, what life brings to all of us is nobody knows what's going to come down the pipe, you know? So then I think there are times where a person might be more aware or more ready to hear him, but the presentation of the gospel should always be.
It can always be the same.
Yeah. And how it's taken in. And that's, I think, where it comes down to where it's not to make, dude, that quote from C.S. Lewis for me, it course corrected me because it's not to make somebody better.
Yeah.
Like
to make
Jesus
someone who was dead alive. Yeah.
And like that concept. And then one, it's like two, I think, like I said, and like one, it's like two. I often think too of in Revelation, it says, you know, you overcome the devil by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Over time, I believe we've taken,
and might I add, at the end of it says, we overcame the enemy by the blood of the Lamb, the word of our testimony, and we loved our lives even unto death.
Hardcore.
That's a big. We often
leave that
skip
out.
that part,
Yeah.
and that's a comfort thing,
Yeah.
right? You know, like I don't value myself even unto death
Yeah.
because his words and who he is matters more.
Yep.
You know, sorry. Keep
No,
going.
I love that.
I just
No.
want to put that.
I love that.
Put that in there.
You're right on adding that in. What I think is we discredit the word of our testimony. Like it's like we have a very hard time. And I've said, I had a thing in the past where I wanted to do like the gospel according to Nate, the gospel of Ethan Brigger, like the gospel of, you know, like, because it is the forgiveness of God and the word of my testimony. And I think often we try to pull the word of Paul's testimony. We try to pull the word of John's. We try to pull the word of Moses. We try to pull all the word of their testimony to present it to somebody because we feel that we don't have, or we can't offer, or I don't know how to say it, or they're going to say it better, or all this stuff. And we discount our own story because it's like, well, I didn't do this, or I didn't do this, or he just did this for me. And it's like,
Dude.
yeah, he did just do this for you. Like, because like, and then I think too, like when his word where he says those who've been forgiven of much, how does it go? It says those who have
been given much are required of much.
No, I'm thinking of the other one. I don't know.
Which one you're
It's talking about like when you've been they're more thankful. Like if you've been forgiven of a lot, you have this more thankful of like, you know.
Yeah. Those who are forgiven a little are thankful for a little, but those who are forgiven much are
thankful
are
a
like
lot.
abounding in joy or whatever.
Fact check it. It's in the Bible. Anyways,
The premise is correct.
premise is correct. I'm not a pastor. But like, so then like I dissected that thought a little bit. And then initially I feel like we think of like bad things we've done. Bad. You know, this dude was way worse than me, or this chick was way whatever than me, or whatever. But it's like the realization of what you've been forgiven of is death.
Yes.
It's not being bad. It's just death. So then like I think often our gospel within his forgiveness has value to be shared.
Yes.
And
100%.
we discount the appropriate of the gospel because we're pulling from sources where we're trying to talk about an idea of something, of a church, of a getting right of this or that, versus like what you mentioned of a person who affected my life personally, you know?
Yeah. I've had moments in the past where I've preached the gospel to someone whose life looks before Jesus looks way rougher than what my life looked like. So I'm just thinking, how in the world can I actually preach the gospel right now to somebody who legit look like, when I'm just like over here, like, yeah, I was really insecure and he made me secure. You know, like that
Right.
feels, you can discount it and make it sound so tiny.
Yeah.
And that's what the enemy will come and do. And so he'll say, like, you're insignificant. What you have to say doesn't matter. You don't carry authority. What you have to say is not powerful. It's weak. You know,
Yeah.
he'll say things like that. But then you realize that, like, my insecurities overcame every area of my life. And this dude who's standing across from me, who's addicted to cocaine, who probably slept with a prostitute the night before, who's dealing drugs and an alcoholic and all these things, he's just living out insecurities. It doesn't matter. Like, before we knew Jesus, it didn't matter. Like, we all were in sin. Like, you could be in a sin that looks super innocent, but to God it's all the same. And so, like, whether you're the worst of the worst and a murderer and, you know, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're all part of the same level playing field. It's when you meet Jesus is what matters. And so, like, for me, I had to tell myself, when I'm preaching the gospel, I'm not preaching about how terrible my life used to be. I'm preaching about how good Jesus is.
Yeah.
And because I think that's where we mess it up, is we think we have to put on this display of how awful life was before, or, you know, thinking that other people's testimony is so much more powerful because their before Jesus was so dark.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, without Jesus, everything is dark.
It's dark.
It's all
Death
the
is
same.
death.
Yeah. It's pitch black.
Yeah.
It's like, when there's no light on in a room, it doesn't matter whether you're stumbling into whatever this is or that. It's still dark. But when Jesus turns the light on, it's light. And so I think we can turn it into things where it's like, oh, well, I don't want to be shocking to people, because if they're in tons of darkness right now, I don't want to just, like, boom, light. And it's like, that's what we all want.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we're all crawling around before we know Jesus on our hands and feet, just trying to grab onto anything that will fulfill our heart. And that's what you're saying, is it's all death. It doesn't matter what sin it is, but it's just like, oh, this seems like this might fulfill, oh man, this might do it. I don't know, maybe. And then you finally get the hem of Jesus's robe and you're like, what? Like, this is real. This feels real. You know, like, my heart feels like this is what I've been looking for, you know?
Dude, I love that.
Oh, I'm getting excited.
I like to, I think a lot of things, I feel like people are probably thinking right now, yeah, but what am I supposed to just go just ripping off Bible verses to everybody or whatever? So when I think of, like, the gospel's always appropriate and it's always ready. The other thing that I have realized over the years is I'm daily in situations that it would be the most bizarre thing to just be like, hey, you guys, anybody not want to go to hell? You know, like, how do you kick that off?
Yeah.
What I have realized personally is, all right, if the gospel's ready and it's appropriate, then what can I do, or how do I do this? And something that I've learned is to create opportunities to do it. Because that, to me, has been like a game changer.
Yeah.
And it takes, anybody can do it.
Yep.
Because it's the same power that raised Christ from the dead lives in us. It's the Holy Spirit that gives us the ability to do these things. And I think of times where I've created an outlet to do something to where people who may not attend a church or may not have faith or may not have anything, where they can come to it and be a part of it, and then they're coming to this thing. So it's like you have the ability, then the access to speak in ways that you may not in certain areas, But even within those areas, I really think if you apply the concept of creating opportunity for people to meet Jesus versus waiting to fall in a hole that Jesus is hiding in,
Yeah.
and then they're like there too. So it's like, oh, sweet. Now I can talk about God.
Yeah.
You know?
Like you're not, a lot of people almost wait until their friends hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Because it's inevitable. You're going to hit, if
Yeah.
you don't have Jesus, you're going to hit rock bottoms at some point or you'll die.
All of the,
So-
dude, it's the
but-
crutches of life, man. We
Yeah.
all have them. And
But then when that thing falls apart,
Mm-hmm.
that's when we're like, oh, now it's a good time. But it's like, no, it's always appropriate. It was
Yeah.
appropriate before that.
Yeah.
Because they were headed there.
yes.
But you weren't finding avenues to share.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like what you said of like, you're not going to be in surgery and just be like, somebody's about to go under anesthesia and just be like, hey, are you going to go to heaven or hell? You know,
Hey, quick question.
yeah, hey, quick question. Do you know,
Yeah.
like that? I mean, if the Lord told you to, you probably would. But if in most cases, you know, you'll probably be like, I don't know if this is appropriate, you know,
Dude,
for this scenario.
You're right. And then,
But that's where I'm gonna play devil's advocate right now
ahead.
because we might say, oh, I don't know if this is appropriate now. But if Jesus says it's appropriate,
It's
it's
appropriate.
appropriate. You know, there's rarely times that it's not appropriate. But I think it's just the way we deliver who Jesus is to people. You know, where I work with people pretty regularly who are like they go through some traumatic stuff and instead of just being like, oh, sending my thoughts, sending good vibes your way, you know, like I'm just like, hey, I'm just so you know I'm praying for you
Yeah.
today. Like me and my family are going to pray tonight before we have dinner, and we're going to hold hands and we're going to pray. And it's like things like that where it's just like that's not hard to be like we believe. Like I've told people I believe that Jesus can heal this person, your loved one, whatever. And so we're going to pray tonight, or like we're going to do communion as a family. And if they're like, well, that's weird. It's like, well, okay, I don't care. You know, it's like, I'm just not worried about them thinking I'm weird. Cause at the end of the day, the love that we're giving them is far greater than just sending good vibes.
dude, it's
You know?
the gospel is truth. And when fire comes and it burns things away, the only thing that's left is the truth.
Truth. Yeah.
And I think of our friend Ian, where he, like his story, his walk with God, he came from things, and he says he remembers like when life crumbled, there was things still standing, and it was moments of people presenting the gospel to him.
Dude.
That's
yeah.
what stood out to him. It wasn't social media outlets. It wasn't insecurities being pampered. It wasn't all. It was life fell apart, and the only thing left standing were truths of God. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like we wait for we try to wait for an opportunity instead of creating an opportunity.
Yep.
And that takes, like I said, it's anybody. You can say, well, oh, look at you, Nick, you and Ethan, you guys are loud and always want to be in front and always are looking for attention.
Nah.
Whatever. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. That truly doesn't matter, because when you put somebody in a situation that presses them, it doesn't matter what your personality is. You're only going to fall back on, like, it's like,
You're going to want to
you're
comfort
gonna want to
yourself.
come- yeah,
yeah.
it's
You're
like
going to be
there's-
like your natural instinct is I don't want to be I don't want to be uncomfortable, so I'm going to take the most comfortable route.
yeah.
It's the path of
Least
resistance. You know,
And that happens whether you're quiet or you're loud, if you're this or you're that. That's all the same.
extrovert, introvert, it's all
None
the
of
same.
that. It's common ground. And that's where like the Holy Spirit is our guide and counselor and comforter. And he's our
Yes.
resource. And I've been in spots where I'll share this quick story. There was a person at work had a stroke, and we went from our procedure room, did all the code stroke stuff, did all the stuff. I took him up to the room. I'm in his room with other RNs I work with in the ICU. They're doing their thing. They're whatever to the neurologist. I'm standing next to my dude who I've been with since the beginning of the day for this case. And I'm like, the Holy Spirit's like, pray for him. And I was just like, I don't think we need to do that, because we got
I'm
a
going
lot of
to lose
physicians.
my job.
We got a lot of physicians helping and stuff. So then I was just I did it. And I'm not saying that to be anything. It was just more of that moment. God weighed more to me than them.
Yeah.
And that was it. It was the simplest way to put it. He
You
weighed
just
more.
got into my notes right
Dude.
there.
And it was
So
like,
good.
and as like dumb as I felt, I just leaned down to this dude who's can't really respond too much. But I'm like, I'm going to pray with you. And I did. And I don't, it was like, it was just a moment of like, that one was opportunity. I didn't create opportunity. I acted in opportunity.
Yeah.
But there's other times where you create the opportunity, and the appropriateness of the gospel is ready when you're listening to the Holy Spirit to apply it.
Yeah.
Because then you'll go as deep as it needs to go. Because if you ask me, what do you do? I'm an RN, but what do you do? Well, I'm an RN in a cardiovascular lab, but what do you do? You know, it's like there's this sense I could tell you the details of my job, or I could tell you what I do. And there's this layer of appropriateness as to when it's, or not even so much appropriateness or readiness of how much you're ready to understand of what I'm telling you.
Yep.
But it's like we follow conversation all the time, and we get in depth and in deep with stuff because we're just following the conversation.
Yeah.
The gospel is no different, but we shy away because
but it's appropriate
always,
whether it's just a little like,
yeah,
hey, you have this splinter in your arm, I'm just gonna pull this out for you real quick, or like a full on just like
you
bam,
need to hear this. Yeah.
like it's time to meet Jesus right now.
Dude, for real.
you know, and so you said something. You said the
weight.
you cared way more about the weight of God. One of my notes said that I wrote down said we've come to learn to fear men more than we fear God. And what that means. So I don't mean being scared of God or being afraid of God. What I mean is revering or reverence. Like we give honor almost more to people and their feelings more than we give honor to God and his feelings.
Yeah.
Like, don't you think that his son and who he is, like in the sacrifice that he did, don't you think that he deserves everything and everyone for what he did? And if you don't feel like he does, then there's a disconnect between you and your gospel. You know, there's that disconnect between like you don't know your own good news.
Dude.
And so it's really this comes back to two different things. Is like we need to have a full connection and an understanding about what Jesus did for me personally and you personally watching this or listening to this. Like we need to know what he did for Ethan. You know what I mean? Deep down, what did he deliver me from? What did he liberate me from? Because ultimately, if that's at the forefront, then every time you meet with people, you'll be remembering what he did, you know? And it also comes back to not creating hurdles that don't need to be there. Like one hurdle I hear Christians say all the time is what Nate just addresses. Well, it's not my personality type to preach the gospel. Or like people have turned the fivefold into a personality type, which is not biblical at all. The fivefold ministry is apostles, prophets, teachers, pastors, evangelists. So we take those and we turn them into like a personality type. Like, well, I'm this and this. And it's like, that's actually not biblical at all. Those were positions in the church that were supposed to be literally 5 people for a church. And we've turned it into well, I'm a pastor and a prophet, so I don't really evangelize because that's not my calling.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or well, I'm an apostle and a prophet, so I'm really more of a, come to me if you want to.
Big picture stuff.
Yeah.
More
big
big.
picture. Yeah.
I'm more big picture.
Exactly. It's turning who he called you into and then starting to categorize him by your personality, and you're actually limited. Like, what disciple walked up to Jesus when he was like, yeah, hey, I want you guys to go into this town, preach the gospel, but you're going to be sheep among wolves. And which disciple went to him and was like, yeah, Jesus, I'm an introvert. I don't know if you knew that or not, but
You probably didn't because I didn't tell you.
Yeah, you probably didn't know because I was behind everybody. But yeah, I'm not up for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nobody did that. And you know, there were a couple introverts in there.
Yeah.
Who were like not super, like, let's
Just
go
loud
talk to
and
people
crazy,
all day.
yeah, cutting off an
and
ear.
we limit ourselves based on just dumb things that we've created,
Mm-hmm.
like personality types. And it's appropriate.
I think something too to hinder it is like our faith. Like you mentioned something. If you want your faith in God to grow, you need to get a grip on the hope, because He says to be ready to give an answer for the hope that's in you to anyone who asks, and do it
Yes.
respectfully. So if you need to do this right now, is get eyes on the hope that's in you. So like if you're a Christian and you're like, well, I don't know if I have the faith to just step out and do that, all this stuff, get eyes on your hope, because
So good.
like our faith is the substance of what we hope for. It's the evidence of what we don't see. And we discount hope, but He is our hope. So when you see the hope in you,
Yeah.
then your faith will grow, because like I kind of started dissecting that verse a little bit. Like, what is the hope in me then? Like, why do I even care about God? Why do I love you? Why? You know? And then to start getting into it of like, well, He died for me, so that's good. And He forgave me of sins, that's good. And then
Yeah.
but to start going like, why me though? Not why everybody.
Yes.
But why
me?
do I have hope in you? And why is your hope in me? And then I dissected it down to my personal, to me. And that will build your faith, because it's like, it's tangible. And
Yes.
then the appropriateness of the gospel has a different sense, because it's like, what are you doing? You're sharing the hope that's within you to somebody. This is why I hope this,
Yeah.
like, and then it's a different ball game.
So good. It's so good.
So I say
that's the
send it.
Yeah. And I'm going to add a resource just
All
like
right.
the last episode.
So this week's Send It is revisit the hope that's within you. And I'm talking to every single person, because we all have a hope within us, whether even right now you're listening like at the beginning and you're like, I don't really know too much about Jesus, whatever. You have hope in you. The situation that we find is hope only lasts so long apart from Jesus. And we can argue that on a different day, but
Yeah.
when life ends, eternity doesn't. So there's a lot of hopes that last long enough. The problem is you don't. So you die. And then what? The hope in me carries through the eternity. So it's like, dissect your hopes. What is it? What is the hope in you if you're a Christian? That why are you believing in Him? Why are you putting your faith in Him and stuff like that? That will be a catalyst for your faith, is
Yeah.
when you get eyes on your hope.
And that will take you to, now I'm willing to do something for Him because He first did something
Yeah.
for me. Because that's
He loved
the
us.
big thing.
He-
He loved us before we loved Him, right?
Yeah.
And there's a response that's required of us,
Mm-hmm.
whether you like it or not. But like, guess what? It's not just a like, here's a gift and you get to do nothing for the rest of your life. There's responsibility, required of us.
For sure.
Resource for those of you who are, watching this and you're like, I want to rekindle that fire of why I started following Jesus, is this book by Peter Lewis, and it's tiny. It's just a one day,
It's
day
literally-
by
the book
day.
is like this big.
It's so, yeah, it's awesome. It's just this big. And it's called Keep the Blood Warm. When you read the first bit, it'll make sense. It's basically just talking about like the blood of Jesus and making that the forefront of your mind, of like understanding that His sacrifice is just as real today as it was the day that it happened. But it goes through day by day, walking through verses and then you slow down and you start reading verses and you be like, what does this mean for me? That though I was far off and I was far away, He came near,
Yeah.
So please read that book if you already haven't. It's very good.
Right on. Love you guys.
Love you guys.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for liking. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, comment below.
Thanks for commenting.
Yep. Okay. Love you guys. Have a good day.
See ya.
Bye. That was